Welcome to Poirot's Mysteries. I'm Nolan Drake. Settle in with a cup of tea, my friends, as we embark on another thrilling adventure with the incomparable Hercule Poirot. Today, we're diving into a brand new tale I've crafted just for you. Fatal Echo from the Bell Tower, a Hercule Poirot mystery. This is a long one, over 90 minutes of slow, deliberate storytelling to help you unwind and puzzle along. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next mystery. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? London, the countryside, or perhaps aboard a train like the Orient Express? Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Invitation to Langford Manor. In the golden haze of an autumn afternoon in 1927, the English countryside unfolded like a meticulously painted canvas, its rolling hills draped in a tapestry of amber leaves and fading greens. The air carried the crisp bite of impending winter, mingled with the earthy scent of damp soil and distant wood smoke. It was a time when the world still moved. At the leisurely pace of steam trains and horse-drawn carriages, an era where secrets simmered beneath the veneer of polite society. And in the heart of Sussex, where the ancient landscapes whispered tales of forgotten nobility, stood Langford Manor, a sprawling estate that seemed to defy the passage of time. The manor itself was an architectural marvel, born from the ambitions of Tudor lords and embellished through the centuries with Georgian elegance and Victorian flourishes. Its red brick facade, cloaked in thick ivy that climbed like ambitious fingers toward the slate rooftops, exuded an air of quiet authority. Grand mullioned windows gazed out over manicured gardens, where topiaries stood sentinel and fountains murmured softly in the twilight. But it was the bell tower that truly commanded attention. A solitary spire, rising from the eastern wing, its stone weathered by 400 years of storms and suns. Crowned with a massive bronze bell, forged in the fires of the Reformation era, the tower was legendary in local lore. Villagers spoke in hushed tones of its echoes, which could carry for miles across the moors, sometimes sounding like the lament of lost souls or the triumphant call of victory. On clear nights, it was said, the bell's peals could mimic the human voice, a fatal echo that foretold misfortune. It was to this enigmatic domain that Hercule Poirot, the diminutive yet formidable Belgian detective, found himself summoned. Poirot, with his egg-shaped head, meticulously waxed moustache, and eyes that sparkled with the sharpness of polished emeralds, had long since established himself as the preeminent solver of puzzles in London's elite circles. His little grey cells, as he fondly referred to his unparalleled intellect, had unravelled enigmas from the drawing-rooms of Mayfair to the opulent carriages of the Orient Express. Retirement had beckoned more than once, but the allure of human folly, of jealousy, greed, and deception always drew him back. The invitation arrived on a foggy morning in his modest yet impeccably ordered apartment on Whitehaven Mansions in London. Poirot was savouring his tisane, a herbal infusion prepared to his exact specifications, when the telegram boy knocked. The message was terse, as such communications often were, but laced with an undercurrent of urgency. Monsieur Poirot, urgent family matter at Langford Manor, discretion paramount, arrive Friday eve, expenses covered, Sir Reginald Langford. Poirot arched an eyebrow, his moustache twitching slightly as he pondered the sender. Sir Reginald Langford, a name that resonated in the corridors of industry and finance. A self-made titan of steel and railways, knighted for his contributions to the empire's infrastructure during the Great War. Rumours abounded of his ruthless business tactics, his vast fortune amassed through shrewd deals and, some whispered, less savoury means. Family discord. Poirot's curiosity was piqued. "Ah, Hastings, mon ami," he might have said if his faithful companion were present. "The English aristocracy, they hide their skeletons with such exquisite politeness." But Hastings was away on some errand, leaving Poirot to contemplate alone. He accepted, of course. A quick wire confirmed his attendance, and by Friday afternoon, Poirot was aboard the Southeastern Railway, his valise packed with essentials, his silver-topped cane, a selection of patent leather shoes, and a mind sharpened for intrigue. The train chugged through the suburbs, past hedgerows and sleepy villages, until it deposited him at a quaint station where a chauffeured Rolls-Royce awaited. The drive to the manor wound through narrow lanes flanked by ancient oaks, their branches forming a natural archway that dappled the road in shadow and light. As the car crested a hill, Langford Manor came into view, bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. The bell tower loomed tallest, its silhouette stark against the reddening sky. Poirot alighted at the gravel driveway, adjusting his Homburg hat and smoothing his overcoat. The front door, a massive oak affair studded with iron, swung open to reveal Mr. Graves, the butler. Graves was a figure straight from a Gothic novel. Tall and gaunt, with a face etched by years of service, his eyes dark pools that betrayed little emotion. His uniform was immaculate, his posture rigid as a guardsman's. "Welcome to Langford Manor, Monsieur Poirot," Graves intoned, his voice a deep resonant baritone that seemed to echo the bell tower itself. "Sir Reginald is expecting you. May I take your coat?" Poirot handed over his belongings with a nod, his keen eyes already cataloguing details. The polished marble floor of the entrance hall, the grand staircase curving upward like a serpent, and the faint scent of beeswax and lavender that permeated the air. "Merci, Monsieur Graves. The journey was most pleasant. Tell me, how long have you served at the Langford family?" 20 years, sir," Graves replied, leading the way. "Through thick and thin, as they say." The drawing-room was a sanctuary of luxury, its walls panelled in dark oak and adorned with oil paintings of stern ancestors, men with powdered wigs, and women in elaborate gowns, all staring down with judgmental eyes. A fire crackled in the immense hearth, casting flickering shadows that danced across crystal decanters and velvet armchairs. Sir Reginald Langford rose from his seat by the window. A robust man in his early 60s, his face florid from good living and perhaps a touch too much port. His handshake was firm, almost crushing, a testament to his industrial roots. "Monsieur Poirot! A pleasure, a true pleasure," boomed Sir Reginald, his voice filling the room like a cannonade. "I've heard tales of your exploits. That affair on the Nile, was it? Remarkable. Do sit down. Sherry, or perhaps something stronger." Poirot demurred politely, opting for a small aperitif. "The Nile was indeed memorable, Sir Reginald, but each case is unique, no? You mentioned a matter of family discord. Pray, elaborate." Before Sir Reginald could respond, the door opened to admit Lady Eleanor Langford, his wife. She was a vision of faded elegance, in her mid-40s, with porcelain skin and hair the colour of polished chestnut, swept into a chignon. Her gown, a soft emerald silk, whispered as she moved, but her eyes, wide and shadowed, spoke of hidden worries. "Monsieur Poirot, how kind of you to come," she said, her voice cultured and soft, with the faint lilt of a finishing school education. She extended a gloved hand, which Poirot kissed with continental flair. "The pleasure is mine, madame," he replied. "Your home is most magnifique." As they settled, the rest of the household began to filter in, drawn perhaps by the novelty of a famous guest. First came Arthur Langford, the son and heir apparent. At 28, Arthur was the epitome of the Jazz-age wastrel. Tall, handsome in a rakish way, with slicked back hair and a perpetual smirk. He lounged against the mantelpiece, lighting a cigarette with a silver lighter, his eyes appraising Poirot with a mix of curiosity and disdain. Whispers in London clubs spoke of his gambling debts, piled high from nights at Monte Carlo and illicit card games in Soho. "Father's latest whim, eh?" Arthur drawled. "Hiring a detective for family squabbles. Charming." "Mind your tongue, boy," Sir Reginald snapped, though there was a weary fondness beneath the bark. Next entered Eliza Langford, the daughter, a striking young woman of 24, with cascading red hair that framed a face of porcelain delicacy. Her eyes, green and fierce, held a spark of rebellion. She wore a modern frock that hinted at flapper influences, and around her neck dangled a pearl necklace that caught the firelight. Eliza's passions lay in the arts. She dreamed of eloping with a struggling painter named Julian, a match her father vehemently opposed. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice bright but edged with tension, "I've read about you in the papers. Do you really solve crimes with just your mind?" Poirot chuckled softly. "Ah, mademoiselle, the mind is the greatest weapon. But tell me, what troubles brew in this beautiful home?" The group was completed by two guests who added layers to the gathering. Colonel Desmond Harrington, a retired army officer with a moustache that rivaled Poirot's in grandeur, entered with a military stride. His face was weathered from campaigns in India and Africa, and his eyes held the steel of a man accustomed to command. He and Sir Reginald were old acquaintances turned rivals, locked in a bitter dispute over a Manchester factory acquisition where Sir Reginald had allegedly undercut him. "Poirot, old chap," the colonel boomed, clapping the detective on the back a bit too heartily. "Heard you're a wizard at puzzles. Hope there's no need for your skills here, though with Reggie, one never knows." Lastly, there was Miss Penelope Thorne, Penny, as she was known, the young housemaid who glided in to refresh the drinks. Slender and unassuming in her black uniform and white apron, with mousy brown hair pinned neatly, she moved with quiet grace. But Poirot noted the intelligence in her downcast eyes, and the slight tremor in her hands as she poured. Rumours below stairs suggested Sir Reginald had accused her of petty theft, a missing brooch, and threatened dismissal, igniting a grudge that simmered unspoken. As the clock on the mantel ticked toward dinner, conversations ebbed and flowed like the tide. Sir Reginald leaned close to Poirot, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "It's these anonymous letters, you see, threats, veiled but clear. Your sins will echo from the tower," one said. "And family tensions, Arthur's debts, Eliza's foolish romance, Eleanor's distractions." He glanced at his wife, who busied herself with a book. "Even the staff. Graves is loyal, but Penny, well, she's been insolent." Poirot nodded, his grey cells already whirring. "And the bell tower, Sir Reginald. It features in these threats?" "Aye, family tradition. I ring it myself each evening at 9. Clears the cobwebs, connects to our history, but lately its echoes feel ominous." Suddenly, as if on cue, the bell tolled from afar. A deep sonorous peal that reverberated through the manor, shaking the very foundations. The group fell silent, each lost in thought. Poirot felt a chill, not from the draught, but from the intangible sense of foreboding. Little did they know, this echo was but a prelude to the fatal one that would soon shatter their world. Dinner was announced shortly after, the bell's call summoning them to the dining hall. As they rose, Poirot observed the interplay. Arthur's sly glance at Penny, Eliza's fidgeting with her necklace, Lady Eleanor's forced smile, the Colonel's stiff posture, Graves's impassive mask. The stage was set, the players assembled, and in the shadow of the bell tower, mystery loomed. Chapter 2. The Toll of Death. A single long table, polished to a mirror sheen, stretched beneath a vaulted ceiling where plaster cherubs gazed down in eternal, smug serenity. 3 chandeliers, each holding 24 beeswax tapers, cast pools of golden warmth that barely reached the corners, leaving the ancestral portraits in half-shadow, their eyes glinting like conspirators. The air was heavy with the perfume of roast pheasant, rosemary, and the faint metallic tang of old silver. Sir Reginald Langford presided at the head, carving the bird with theatrical flourish, his sleeves rolled once to reveal forearms thick as hams. To his right sat Lady Eleanor, spine straight, fingers tracing the stem of a crystal goblet, as though it were a rosary. Arthur lounged opposite, one elbow on the damask cloth, cigarette smouldering in a jade holder despite his father's scowl. Eliza, beside her mother, toyed with a bread roll, crumbling it into tiny alps. Colonel Harrington, at the foot, attacked his plate with regimental precision, while Mr. Graves circled the table like a black-clad moon, decanting claret with the solemnity of a priest. Miss Penny Thorne darted in and out, a silent wraith in starched apron, refilling water glasses before they were half empty. Conversation began politely enough. Weather, the new wireless programs, the Prince of Wales's latest escapade. But beneath the surface, currents tugged. Sir Reginald speared a slice of pheasant and brandished it like Excalibur. "Arthur, the Manchester Works report came in today. Output down another 6%. Care to explain why the foreman spends more time at the Dog and Duck than on the factory floor?" Arthur exhaled smoke toward the ceiling cherubs. "Perhaps because the wages you pay wouldn't keep a church mouse in communion wine." Lady Eleanor's goblet paused halfway to her lips. "Reginald, not at table. Not at table." Sir Reginald's laugh boomed, ricocheting off the rafters. "The boy's debts are a banquet for every bookmaker in Mayfair. We'll discuss it wherever I damn well please." Eliza's chair scraped. "Leave him alone, father. At least Arthur isn't poisoning the rivers with your factory sludge." The Colonel cleared his throat, a sound like gravel under boot. "Langford's methods are robust, I'll grant. But robust keeps the empire spinning, eh, Poirot?" Poirot, seated to Sir Reginald's left, dabbed his moustache with a napkin the colour of fresh cream. "Robust, oui. But even the strongest engine may throw a piston if overheated, n'est-ce pas?" Penny leaned past Poirot to refill his glass. Her sleeve brushed his cuff, and he caught the faintest tremor in her wrist. Her eyes, hazel, flecked with gold, met his for a fraction of a second before dropping. A flicker of fear? Resentment? He filed it away. Graves announced the next course, soufflé, and the tension eased into the clink of cutlery. Outside, the wind had risen, rattling the leaded windows. Somewhere in the distance, a fox barked. The great clock in the hall struck 8:30, its chime muffled by thick doors, yet unmistakable, like a heartbeat beneath floorboards. At 8:55, Sir Reginald pushed back his chair. "Time for the evening bell. Tradition, Poirot. You'll indulge an old man's superstition?" Poirot inclined his head. "Tradition is the scaffolding of civilization, monsieur." Sir Reginald fished a heavy iron key from his waistcoat pocket. An ancient thing, black with age, its bow shaped like a miniature portcullis. Tower doors the only access, Spiral stair. 93 steps. I count them every night. Keeps the blood moving. He patted his stomach ruefully. Graves, see our guest has a digestive. Graves bowed. At once, sir? Sir Reginald strode out, footsteps echoing down the east corridor. The dining party migrated to the library, a smaller room, panelled in walnut, smelling of leather bindings and pipe tobacco. A fire roared, shadows capered across shelves of first editions. Arthur poured brandy with a liberal hand. Eliza curled into a window seat, staring into the dark. Lady Eleanor accepted a thimble of chartreuse. The Colonel produced a cigar case. Penny cleared the coffee things, her apron now streaked with pheasant grease. Poirot declined brandy, requesting instead a tisane, chamomile with a twist of lemon. Graves disappeared to fetch it. 9 o'clock approached. The library clock, a French ormolu piece, ticked with ostentatious loudness. 9:02, 9:04. Arthur checked his wristwatch. Father's dawdling. Usually he's up and down like a yo-yo. Eliza hugged her knees. Perhaps he's composing his memoirs up there. How I conquered the world and annoyed my children. A gust rattled the window panes. Somewhere, a shutter banged. 9:08. Colonel Harrington puffed his cigar. Bell's late. Bad form, Reggie. Poirot's eyes narrowed. He set his cup down untouched. The bell is never late, you say? Never, Lady Eleanor murmured. Reginald is punctuality incarnate. 9:10. Arthur laughed, but it sounded hollow. Maybe he's fallen asleep counting steps. Then, dong! The first peal rolled across the estate, deep, sonorous, vibrating in the breastbone. Dong! Dong! But the rhythm faltered. The third stroke came too soon, the fourth dragged, the fifth clanged wildly, as though the rope were jerked by a madman. Clang! Crack! A sharp, explosive report, unmistakably a gunshot, cut through the bronze resonance. The echo fractured, rebounding from the tower, the hills, the very sky, until it seemed to issue from every wall of the manor at once. For one frozen heartbeat, no one moved. Arthur's brandy glass slipped, shattering on the parquet. "Father!" Eliza screamed. Lady Eleanor's chartreuse splashed across her gown like emerald blood. The Colonel's cigar dropped into the hearth, hissing. Graves burst in, face chalk white. "Sir Reginald! The tower!" Chaos erupted. They spilled into the east corridor, a frantic knot of silk and tweed. The tower door loomed at the passage's end. Solid oak, iron-banded, the keyhole gaping like a dark eye. Arthur seized the handle. It refused to turn. "Locked!" he shouted. "From the inside!" Graves produced a duplicate key from his pocket. Hands trembling so violently, he dropped it twice. The third attempt succeeded. The door groaned open on rusty hinges, exhaling a draught of cold stone and candle smoke. A spiral staircase coiled upward, lit by a single lantern hung on a hook. 93 steps, Sir Reginald had said. They took them 2 at a time. Arthur first, then the Colonel, Eliza clinging to her mother Poirot bringing up the rear with surprising agility, cane tapping a staccato rhythm. The bell chamber opened above them, a circular room 20 feet across, its vaulted ceiling lost in shadow. The great bronze bell hung silent now, its clapper still quivering. Ropes thick as a man's wrist dangled through pulleys. Narrow lancet windows, barred with iron, admitted slivers of moonlight. Sir Reginald Langford lay sprawled beneath the bell, one arm flung wide, the other curled across his chest. Blood pooled beneath his right temple, black in the lantern glow. His eyes stared sightlessly at the rafters. Beside his outstretched hand lay a Webley revolver, his own, kept in the study drawer for emergencies. Powder burns stippled the skin around the wound, the barrel still smoked faintly. Arthur dropped to his knees. "Father, God, no!" Lady Eleanor swayed. Eliza caught her before she fell. The colonel's military composure cracked. He swore under his breath. Graves stood frozen in the doorway, lantern trembling. Poirot knelt, gloved fingers hovering but not touching. "Do not disturb the scene," he commanded, voice calm yet edged with steel. "Inspector Hargrove must be summoned. Graves, telephone the village constable immediately." Graves nodded dumbly and retreated. Poirot's gaze swept the chamber with methodical precision. The door, locked from within, key still in the lock on the inside. Windows barred, shutters bolted, no sign of disturbance. Floor, dusty flagstones, undisturbed save for Sir Reginald's footprints and the scuffs of his collapse. The bell rope, intact, no cut marks. A faint smell of gunpowder mingled with beeswax and age. He leaned closer to the body. Sir Reginald's right hand showed stippling consistent with a contact shot, yet the angle? Poirot's brow furrowed. The wound entered just above the right ear, exiting the left temple, possible for a right-handed man, but the pistol lay 2 feet from the fingers, as though dropped after the fact. And the echo, the gunshot's echo had seemed delayed, muffled, almost wrong. Arthur's voice cracked. "Suicide? But why?" Eliza sobbed. "He was ringing the bell. He must have—" "Oh, father!" Lady Eleanor found her voice, thin and reedy. "Reginald would never, not like this." The colonel retrieved his cigar from the stairs, relit it with shaking match. "Locked room! No one in or out. Damned peculiar." Poirot stood, dusting his knees. Peculiar, oui. Impossible, perhaps. The bell was tolling, frantically, moments before the shot. Yet the door was locked, the key inside. Who rang the bell if Sir Reginald lay dying? And the echo. He tilted his head, listening to the phantom resonance still humming in his ears. The echo does not lie, mes amis, but sometimes it deceives. Downstairs, the telephone jangled as Graves raised the alarm. Outside, the wind howled around the tower like a mourner. The bell hung mute, its bronze surface catching the lantern's glow, silent witness to a crime that defied every law of entrance and exit. Poirot's little grey cells stirred, scenting the exquisite perfume of an enigma. Somewhere in the timbre of that fatal echo lay the first thread of the labyrinth. But for now, the manor held its breath, and the night pressed close. Chapter 3. The Little Grey Cells. Awakened Constable Phipps, a gangly youth with a helmet too large for his head, stood guard at the tower door, notebook trembling in ink-stained fingers. Inspector Hargrove arrived 27 minutes past the telephone call, splashing through puddles in a Burberry trench coat, his moustache bristling with official indignation. He was a solid Sussex man, broad of shoulder and narrow of imagination, who believed that most crimes solved themselves if one simply followed the bootprints. "Poirot," he grunted, wiping rain from his brow. "Didn't expect to see you south of the Thames. Sir Reginald's will names you special consultant. Dashed irregular, but the family insists." Poirot inclined his head, the lantern light gilding the perfect curves of his moustache. "Irregularity, mon cher inspector, is the spice of murder. Seal the tower. No one enters without my leave." Hargrove barked orders. 2 additional constables cordoned the corridor with twine and a hand-lettered sign. "Police, keep out." Downstairs, the household gathered in the morning room. A smaller chamber with sage-green walls, a pianoforte no one played, and French windows rattling in the gale. A coal fire spat and hissed. The clock on the mantel, another French piece, this one enamelled in poudre de bleu, ticked with the solemnity of a metronome counting down to judgment. Poirot entered last, closing the door with a soft click that sounded, in the strange silence, like the cocking of a pistol. 7 faces turned toward him. Lady Eleanor, pale as parchment. Arthur, brandy flask glinting in his fist. Eliza, eyes swollen. Colonel Harrington, rigid as a dress sword. Mr. Graves, statue still. Miss Pennythorne, apron twisted between her fingers. And Dr. Marchbanks, the local GP, summoned to pronounce death, and now lingering like a reluctant guest. Poirot took the centre of the turkey rug, hands clasped behind his back, green eyes moving from face to face. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, voice warm yet edged with steel, "we confront a crime most audacious. A man is shot in a locked tower, while the bell tolls above him. The door is bolted from within, the key in the lock, the windows barred. No rope, no ladder, no secret passage. Inspector Hargrove's men have searched. Yet Sir Reginald did not shoot himself. Observe." He produced a silver propelling pencil and a crisp sheet of notepaper, sketching with quick, economical strokes. "Entry wound, right temple, upward angle. Exit, left temple. Powder stippling, contact range. Pistol, Webley. Mark 6, Sir Reginald's own, registered, but—" He tapped the paper. The bell was ringing, frantically. Who pulled the rope if the victim lay dying? And the echo of the shot, delayed, muffled, as though it travelled through more than air. Arthur drained his flask. Suicide, surely. Father was under strain. Debts, threats. No. Poirot's denial was gentle but absolute. A man who shoots himself does not lock the door behind him, then ring the bell with his last breath. Nor does the pistol leap 2 feet from a dying hand. Observe the dust. He held up a second sheet, traced from the tower floor. Footprints, Sir Reginald's brogues, size 9, approaching the bell mechanism. Then scuffs, collapse, no other prints, yet the rope was pulled with force. Someone was there. Lady Eleanor's voice trembled. "Impossible! We were all together." "Precisely," Poirot murmured, "and yet impossible crimes are my speciality." He began with the household, one by one, in the late baronet's study. A room of dark oak, maps of railway lines, and a faint smell of gun oil. The desk drawer still yawned open where the Webley had lived. She entered wrapped in a cashmere shawl, eyes red-rimmed. Poirot offered a chair. "Madame, your movements after dinner?" "I remained in the library with Eliza and the Colonel until the bell, until the shot." Her fingers worried a lace handkerchief. "Reginald and I quarrelled this morning. He accused me of indiscretions with Desmond." A flush rose. "Lies! I was consulting a solicitor about separation. The letters, he showed them to you?" Poirot nodded. "Anonymous, venomous. Your wife betrays you with the soldier." Reginald believed them. He threatened to cut me off. But murder? Never. Poirot noted the tremor in her left hand. Nerves or guilt? The heir swaggered in, reeking of brandy and defiance. "Alibi, monsieur?" "Library, same as the rest. Stepped onto the terrace for a smoke. Penny saw me." Poirot's eyebrow arched. "Penny? The maid. She was clearing coffee things. Ask her." Arthur's debts totaled 14,000 tollers. Bookmakers, tailors, a dubious motor car scheme. Sir Reginald had refused a further advance that afternoon. Motive gleamed like a blade. She entered clutching a sketchbook, charcoal studies of the bell tower. "I was with Mother. Father forbade my engagement to Julian Carver. He's an artist, penniless. This morning Father tore up Julian's letter and threatened to disinherit me. Tears welled, but I never wished him dead." Poirot turned a page. A drawing of the tower, bell rope coiled like a serpent. "You climb the tower often, mademoiselle?" "Sometimes, to sketch. The view is magnificent." The soldier marched in, boots gleaming. "Library, port and cigars. Alone for 5 minutes, needed air. Bad heart, doctor's orders." his grievance. Sir Reginald had poached the Manchester contract, ruining a $40,000 investment. "Reggie played dirty," the Colonel growled, "but I'd have horsewhipped him, not shot him." Poirot noted the cufflink missing from the Colonel's left sleeve, found later near the body. The butler's mask slipped only once, when Poirot mentioned the key. "I keep the duplicate in my pantry, sir. Standard procedure, 20 years' service." Yet Sir Reginald had docked his wages last Michaelmas over a missing decanter, and Graves had polished the bell mechanism that very afternoon. His duster found in the tower, fibres matching the rope. Penny entered last, twisting her apron until the seams threatened to part. "Library, clearing cups. Saw Master Arthur on the terrace." Her voice was barely audible. Sir Reginald had accused her of stealing Lady Eleanor's sapphire brooch, threatened dismissal without reference. The brooch was later found in Penny's attic room, planted, and the bell rope, Poirot asked softly. I heard it from the kitchen, uneven, like someone drunk." Poirot's eyes narrowed. The kitchen lay beneath the east wing. Sound travelled upward through the stairwell. Dr. Marchbanks confirmed. Death instantaneous, 9:14 p.m., give or take 2 minutes. Gunshot residue on Sir Reginald's right hand, yet the angle suggested another's grip. Poirot returned to the tower at dawn, alone. Rain had ceased. The sky was a washed-out pearl. He climbed the 93 steps slowly, counting aloud. At the top, he examined the bell rope, hemp, recently oiled, fibres compressed as though gripped hard. The mechanism, a simple counterweight system. Pulling the rope lifted the clapper, the pistol, serial number matched the study register. 1 round fired. The echo, Poirot clapped once. The sound returned layered, first from the bell's bronze, then the stone walls, then the hills beyond. A natural amplifier. He descended to the foot of the stair. A faint scuff mark on the 3rd step, mud still damp. Someone had entered after the rain began at 8:47 p.m. In the courtyard, he found a discarded cigarette butt, Turkish, gold-tipped Arthur's brand, but Arthur smoked Abdullah's. This was a Balkan Sobrani, Penny's secret vice, discovered later in her quarters. Back in the morning room, Poirot gathered physical clues on a baize card table. Scrap of emerald silk caught on the tower door hinge, matching Eliza's dinner gown. Colonel's cufflink, monogrammed DH, found beneath the body. Anonymous letter in Sir Reginald's pocket. Your sins will echo from the tower. Typed on manor stationery. Key duplicate from Graves's pantry. Scratched as though forced recently. Mud print on stair, size 7, narrow heel, a woman's shoe. He arranged them like tarot cards. Inspector Hargrove loomed. Suicide, Poirot. Man locks himself in, rings the bell for drama, shoots himself. Echoes just acoustics. Poirot smiled thinly. Then explain the second set of footprints, Inspector. And the cigarette. And the angle of the wound. No, this is murder, most cunning. The locked room is a stage. Someone wished us to see an impossibility. Outside, the bell tower stood sentinel, its bronze throat silent. But Poirot's mind rang with questions. Who benefited most from Sir Reginald's death? Who knew the tower's acoustics intimately? Who could lock a door from the inside, yet not be inside? The little grey cells stirred, scenting the faint perfume of deception. In the library, Arthur poured another brandy. Eliza sketched feverishly. Lady Eleanor stared at nothing. The Colonel cleaned his service revolver with unnecessary vigour. Graves polished silver that gleamed already. Penny hovered at the door, eyes downcast. Poirot watched them all, a spider at the centre of a web woven from lies. Patience, he murmured to himself. The truth, she reveals herself only to those who listen to the echo. Chapter 4. shadows and deceptions. A trestle table, borrowed from the servants' hall, now stood beneath the chandelier like an altar of evidence. Upon it lay the artifacts of murder. The Webley revolver wrapped in oilcloth, the anonymous letter sealed in a glassine envelope, the emerald silk scrap, the colonel's cufflink, the cigarette butt, the mud-caked shoe print lifted on a sheet of blotting paper. Inspector Hargrove's constables hovered like anxious acolytes. Hercule Poirot moved among the objects with the reverence of a priest at vespers. He wore dove-grey spats and a waistcoat the colour of storm clouds. His cane rested against the table like a sceptre. "Observe, mes amis," he began, voice low, "the murderer has been busy. He, or she, has scattered crumbs for us to follow, yet the trail leads always back to the locked tower. We shall follow each crumb, and we shall see where it breaks." He began with the emerald silk. Under a magnifying lens, the tear revealed a jagged edge, snagged, not cut. Eliza's dinner gown, laid out on a chaise, showed a corresponding rent at the hem. "Mademoiselle Eliza," Poirot said, "you climbed the tower yesterday afternoon, no?" Eliza, hollow-eyed from a sleepless night, nodded, to sketch the bell mechanism. "Father caught me. He was furious. Said I was meddling with family relics. I left in tears." Poirot held the scrap to the light. "Yet this tear is fresh, fibres still springing. It catches on the hinge at 9:12 p.m, after the rain. Curious," Arthur snorted. "She's covering for someone, or framing herself for attention." Poirot's gaze flicked to him. "Patience, monsieur. Attention is a motive, but not the only one." Next, the cufflink. Colonel Harrington's initials, D.H., were engraved in florid script. The colonel himself stood ramrod straight, face flushed beneath his tan. "Lost it yesterday morning," he barked. "During a stroll. Must have snagged on a thorn." Poirot produced a second lens. "Yet the gold is bright, no verdigris, no scratches from brambles. And the pin is bent inward, as though forced from the cuff by a downward tug." He demonstrated on his own sleeve. Someone removed it deliberately, then placed it beneath the body. The colonel's jaw worked. Preposterous. "Perhaps," Poirot murmured, "perhaps not." The anonymous letter yielded more. Typed on the Manners Remington portable, kept in the estate office. Poirot had Graves fetch it. The E key stuck slightly, producing a telltale blur on the descender. The letters E's matched exactly. Someone with access to the office, Poirot noted, after hours. Graves paled. "The office is locked at 6. I have the only key." Poirot's smile was wintry. "Then we must ask who borrowed it, monsieur." The cigarette butt was Turkish, gold-tipped, Balkan Sobrani, rare outside London clubs. Arthur smoked Abdullahs. The colonel cigars. Penny's attic room, searched with her trembling permission, yielded a half-empty packet hidden beneath a loose floorboard. I treat myself sometimes," she whispered, "with tips. It's not stealing." Poirot's eyes softened. "Non, ma petite, but someone wishes us to think you lingered near the tower." The mud print on the third stair was size 7, narrow heel, Penny's shoe, or Eliza's, or Lady Eleanor's. A second print, fainter, overlay it, size 9, broader toe, Sir Reginald's own. "Someone followed him up," Poirot said, "or descended after." He summoned the household to the library at noon. Rain lashed the windows, the fire spat resin. "Let us reconstruct," Poirot announced. "Sir Reginald leaves dinner at 8:55. He reaches the tower door at 8:58. Graves hears his footsteps. He locks himself in. Click. He climbs. 93 steps, counting aloud. He reaches the bell at 9:05. He oils the mechanism. Graves's cloth is still damp. He grasps the rope." Poirot paused, letting silence stretch. "Then what?" "The bell tolls unevenly at 9:14. The shot at 9:15. Yet the door remains locked, key inside. How does the murderer enter, kill, and exit, leaving no trace?" Arthur laughed brittle. "A ghost. Ghosts do not leave mud," Poirot replied, "nor do they plant cufflinks." He produced a diagram, floor plans of the east wing, drawn to scale. "Observe, the tower stair rises directly from the corridor. No alcoves, no landings. The door is the only exit. Yet he tapped a wall. Here, an old ventilation shaft, bricked up in 1892. Inspector Hargrove's men chipped away plaster this morning. Solid brick, no passage, dead end. The red herrings multiplied." A forged telegram, found in Sir Reginald's pocket, purportedly from Julian Carver, Eliza's artist, demanding $500 or exposure. The postmark, London, 2 days old. But Julian, contacted by wire, denied all knowledge. His handwriting did not match. A smear of lipstick on the Webley's grip, Lady Eleanor's shade, coral rose. Yet she wore none that evening. Her lips were bare from weeping. A torn betting slip in Arthur's wastebasket. 2,000 on a horse that lost yesterday. Motive sharpened. Poirot tested alibis with a stopwatch. Library to tower door, 45 seconds at a brisk walk. Tower door to bell chamber, 1 minute, 10 seconds climbing. Total, under 2 minutes. Yet every suspect claimed to be in the library when the bell began. He interviewed the outdoor staff. Gardener's boy, Tom, saw a figure in a dark cloak near the tower bass at 8:50. Too early. The stable lad heard a second shot, fainter, at 9:17. Poirot's ears pricked. A second shot. Back in the tower, Poirot experimented. He fired a blank cartridge into a sandbag. The echo returned in 1.8 seconds, direct. Then he fired from the stairwell. Door closed. The echo returned muffled, delayed 2.4 seconds, and seemed to issue from the bell itself. "Acoustics," he murmured. "The tower is a resonator. A shot below could masquerade as one above." He descended to the corridor. The flagstones were damp from rain tracked in. A faint scuff, size 7 again, led not to the tower door, but to a small service cupboard opposite. Inside, a coil of bell rope, spare clapper pins, and Poirot's breath caught a phonograph cylinder, wax, still warm to the touch. The cylinder, when played on the estate's gramophone, produced the exact and even tolling heard at 9:14. Recorded earlier, perhaps during Graves's polishing. "A deception," Poirot exclaimed. "The bell was not rung by human hand at the fatal moment. It was a recording triggered remotely." But how? The gramophone was in the music room, 30 yards away. He examined the cylinder. A thin wire, almost invisible, trailed from the spindle. Fishing line, leading through a mouse hole, along the skirting, up the tower stair, threaded through a pulley above the bell. A sharp tug from below would start the cylinder. The wire would retract, leaving no trace. The locked door suddenly made sense. The murderer never entered the tower. Sir Reginald was shot elsewhere, perhaps in the study, then carried up, posed, the recording played to simulate the tolling. The door locked from inside with a string trick. Thread looped through the key, pulled from outside, key left, in lock. But the body was warm when discovered. Rigour absent, death recent. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "No, the timing is wrong. The shot was real, in the tower. But the tolling—" He climbed again. At the bell mechanism, he found a clockwork device, a modified alarm clock, gears meshed with the rope pulley. Set to jerk the rope at 9:14, mimicking frantic pulling. The spring was still taut. Someone had wound it that afternoon. Graves's polishing cloth smelled of machine oil, matching the gears. Poirot confronted the butler in the pantry. "You oiled the bell, oui, but you also wound the clockwork. Why?" Graves's mask cracked. "Sir Reginald ordered it, said he wanted to test a new ringer for stormy nights. I thought nothing of it." Truth or lie? The second shot puzzled. Poirot returned to the courtyard. Beneath the tower, a shard of bronze, part of the bell's rim, freshly chipped, a bullet scar. The stable lad's second shot was the ricochet, echoing at 9:17. The bullet had struck the bell, deflected, embedded in the rafters. Poirot pried it out. 455 caliber, Webley. But the angle fired from below through the open tower door, upward into the chamber. The murderer stood in the corridor, fired as Sir Reginald reached the bell, then slammed and locked the door, using the string to turn the key from outside. The clockwork tolling began simultaneously, masking the shot's true origin. The echo, amplified by the bell, convinced all the crime occurred above. But the door was locked before the shot, witnesses swore. Poirot smiled. No. The door was locked after the shot by the string. The click we heard was the key turning, not the bolt. Graves heard footsteps, assumed entry. In fact, Sir Reginald was already inside, climbing. The murderer waited below, fired, locked, fled. The mud prints now told a story. Size 7, ascending before Sir Reginald, planting the clockwork. Size 9, Sir Reginald, following. Then size 7 descending after the shot, pulling the string. Penny's shoes were size 7. Eliza's too. Lady Eleanor's also. The lipstick on the Webley? Transferred from the murderer's glove. Lady Eleanor's shade, stolen from her boudoir. The cufflink, planted by the same hand. The forged telegram. Typed on the office machine. Penny had access. She cleaned there nightly. Poirot gathered them in the drawing room at dusk. Candles flickered. The storm had returned. "The murderer is among us," he said softly. "Clever, but not clever enough. The red herrings were too many, too convenient. The clockwork, the recording, the string, all point to someone intimate with the tower's secrets." He laid the wax cylinder on the table. "This was recorded yesterday during polishing. The uneven tolls, Graves's own rhythm, captured. But the murderer added the clockwork to replay it at the fatal moment." Graves swallowed. I told you, sir. Ordered? No. Sir Reginald feared the bell's echo, not its automation. Someone else wound the device." Poirot's gaze swept the room. "The emerald silk, torn deliberately, planted to implicate Mademoiselle Eliza. The cufflink, stolen from the Colonel's drawer. The lipstick, taken from Madame's vanity, all to scatter suspicion." Arthur laughed nervously. "Then who?" Poirot's eyes settled on Penny. "You, ma petite. You climbed the tower at 8:45, set the clockwork, descended, you waited in the cupboard. When Sir Reginald passed, you followed, fired from the doorway as he reached the bell, locked the door with the string, fled. The recording played, the echo deceived. You planted the clues in the night, silk on the hinge, cufflink beneath the body." Penny's face crumpled. He ruined my mother. Promised marriage, left her with child, me, then accused me of theft to be rid of me. I wanted him to hear his own bell toll for his sins." Silence crashed like thunder. Lady Eleanor gasped. Arthur swore. The Colonel's monocle dropped. Inspector Hargrove stepped forward, handcuffs ready. Poirot sighed. "The echo was fatal, oui, but not for Sir Reginald alone." Chapter 5. Echoes of Betrayal. Candles guttered in silver sconces. Rain lashed the French windows like thrown gravel. Pennythorn stood in the centre of the Aubusson rug, wrists already ringed by Inspector Hargrove's handcuffs, her apron twisted into a rope of its own. Her confession, delivered in a voice cracked by years of swallowed rage, still hung in the air like gun smoke. "He ruined my mother," she repeated, eyes fixed on the parquet. "Promised her marriage, gave her a child, me, then cast her out when the village whispered. When I came here as maid, he recognized me, threatened the workhouse if I spoke. The brooch, he planted it himself to be rid of me. I wanted him to hear the bell toll for his sins." Lady Eleanor's hand flew to her throat. Arthur stared, as though seeing the girl for the first time. Colonel Harrington's monocle dangled, forgotten. Graves stood statue still, but a muscle twitched in his cheek. Poirot, immaculate despite the hour, raised a hand. "Patience, mes amis. A confession is a beginning, not an ending. The little grey cells demand precision." He turned to Penny. "You climbed the tower at 8:45, set the clockwork, descended. You waited in the service cupboard. When Sir Reginald passed, you fired from the doorway, locked with the string, planted the clues. Oui?" Penny nodded, tears cutting channels through dust on her cheeks. "Yet," Poirot continued, "the bullet recovered from the rafters, fired upward, yes, but the angle is shallow. From the doorway, the shot would strike the bell's rim at 45 degrees. The scar is vertical, 60 degrees. Someone fired from inside the chamber." Penny blinked. I don't understand." "Nor do I," Poirot admitted. "Not yet." He produced the bullet, flattened, still warm from the evidence pouch. "And the powder residue on Sir Reginald's hand, contact range, yet the stippling is on the left temple. He was right-handed. To shoot himself thus would require contortion. Non. Someone held the pistol to his head, pulled the trigger, then pressed his fingers to the grip post-mortem." Arthur laughed, a brittle sound. "So Penny's lying?" "Or," Poirot said softly, "she is only half the truth." He summoned Dr. Marchbanks, who had lingered to sign the death certificate. The doctor, a thin man with wire spectacles, confirmed, "Rigour absent at discovery, death within the hour. But liver mortis, blood pooling, suggests the body was moved after death. The head was turned slightly to the left post-mortem." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Then Sir Reginald was shot elsewhere, carried to the tower, posed beneath the bell. The clockwork tolling was a diversion, the locked door irrelevant." Inspector Hargrove scratched his head. "But the footprints were made earlier," Poirot finished, "by the murderer, setting the stage. The mud, size 7, was Penny's yes. But the second set, size 9, broader toe, Sir Reginald's own shoes, worn by the killer to mimic his gait." He produced a pair of brogues from the evidence table. Sir Reginald's, mud-caked. "Found in the boot room, hastily cleaned. The left sole has a distinctive nail pattern, matches the tower prints." Penny shook her head violently. "I never touched his shoes." "No," Poirot agreed. "You did not. You set the clockwork, planted the clues, fired the first shot, from the doorway to chip the bell and create the ricochet echo. But the fatal shot, the contact wound, was delivered elsewhere by another hand." The room erupted. "Arthur, then who the devil—" "Lady Eleanor. Reginald was alive when he left the dining room." "Colonel Harrington. This is madness." Poirot raised his cane for silence. "Let us reconstruct again, with new eyes." "But the study door was locked," Hargrove protested. "Graves checked at 9:30. No body." Poirot smiled. "Because the body was already in the tower. The study door was locked from inside, by the murderer, who exited via the window, latch left open, rain-masked footprints on the gravel." He led them to the study. The window latch was indeed unfastened, a faint smudge of mud on the sill, size 9, Sir Reginald's shoe. Outside, beneath the window, a flower bed showed crushed geraniums, weight of a body dragged. "The murderer knew Sir Reginald's routine," Poirot continued, "intercepted him in the study, forced him at gunpoint to write a suicide note, found crumpled in the wastebasket, ink still wet. Forgive me, the debt's then shot him. Staged the tower scene with Penny's unwitting help." Penny sobbed. I thought I killed him. I wanted him to suffer, but not— No, Poirot said gently. You were the perfect scapegoat. The clues, your cigarette, the silk, the cufflink, all pointed to you. But the fatal shot required strength, height, knowledge of the house's hidden ways. Someone who could carry a dead weight up 93 steps. His gaze swept the room and settled on Graves. The butler's face drained of colour. Monsieur, you polished the bell at 3 p.m., Poirot said. You wound the clockwork at Sir Reginald's request, or so you claimed. But the spring tension required a double wind. Your fingerprints on the key. You knew the servant's stare. You wore the master's shoes. You intercepted him in the study, shot him with his own pistol, staged the tower, then returned to the library at 9:10, feigning shock. Graves's composure shattered. He was going to dismiss me. 20 years, and for a decanter. He found my letters. Penny is my daughter, yes. He laughed, said he'd ruin us both. I lost my head. He sank to his knees. I meant only to frighten him. The gun went off, then I panicked. Penny's clues were already in place. She'd been skulking about. I used them. Penny stared at her father, horror dawning. You let me think. Inspector Hargrove snapped cuffs on Graves. Murder and conspiracy. You'll hang, man. Poirot sighed. The echo was fatal, oui, but betrayal— that is the true poison. The suicide note. Graves forced Sir Reginald to write it, then crumpled it to suggest despair. The lipstick. Graves stole it from Lady Eleanor's drawer to implicate her. The cufflink, lifted from the Colonel's laundry basket. The forged telegram, typed by Graves, who had access to the office key. Penny, cleared of murder but guilty of conspiracy, planting clues, firing the diversionary shot, wept in Eliza's arms. Lady Eleanor whispered, My husband, a monster in life, a puppet in death. Arthur, heir to a bankrupt estate, stared into the fire. All for nothing. Colonel Harrington retrieved his monocle, polished it, said nothing. Outside, the storm broke. The bell tower stood silent, its bronze throat finally at peace. Poirot addressed the room. The impossible crime was a duet. Father and daughter, each believing they acted alone. The echo deceived them both. He turned to leave, cane tapping a slow rhythm. Justice, mes amis, is the only echo that does not lie. Chapter 6. The Unveiling. Heavy velvet drapes were drawn back to let in the morning light. Dust motes danced like tiny witnesses. The trestle table now bore a single object, a large architectural plan of Langford Manor, unrolled and weighted at the corners with silver candlesticks. Around it stood the survivors, Lady Eleanor in mourning black, Arthur hollow-eyed, Eliza clutching a damp handkerchief, Colonel Harrington ramrod straight, Pennythorn pale but uncuffed, her role reduced to accessory, and Mr. Graves in a constable's grip, wrists raw from iron. Inspector Hargrove loomed by the door, notebook open, pencil poised. Hercule Poirot took the stage at the head of the table, hands clasped behind his back, the perfect curve of his moustache catching the sun like polished ebony. Mesdames et messieurs, he began, voice warm yet resonant, we have travelled a crooked path through jealousy, greed, and vengeance. 2 hands pulled the trigger, one in rage, one in panic. 2 minds believed themselves sole author of the crime. Yet the little grey cells, they do not lie. Let us lay the tapestry flat and see every thread. He placed a finger on the plan. We begin with the bell tower itself, the locked room that was never locked at the fatal moment. Sequence of events. Precise to the second, Poirot paused, letting the timeline settle like dust. Observe the duet of deception, he continued. Penny believed she fired the fatal shot. Graves believed the locked door and clockwork would shield him. Each supplied the other's perfect alibi and perfect scapegoat. He moved to the evidence table, lifting each item like a conjurer. Poirot turned to Penny. You hated him, oui. You planted the brooch in your own room to be discovered. Martyrdom. But you fired only the echo shot. Penny's voice was a whisper. I wanted him to know fear before the end. Poirot's eyes softened. Fear he knew, ma petite, but not from you. He faced Graves. And you, monsieur, 20 years of loyalty, erased by one cruel laugh. You used your daughter's rage as camouflage. Graves's head bowed. He said we were nothing, less than the mud on his boots. Inspector Hargrove closed his notebook with a snap. Graves, murder, Thorn, conspiracy to pervert justice, clear as daylight. Motive matrix, final Graves, dismissal, exposure of Penny's parentage, 20 years of swallowed pride. Penny, revenge for her mother, fear of the workhouse. Arthur, 14,000 thalers debts, cleared by inheritance, but he was in the library, drunk. Eliza, forbidden love, Julian's forged telegram a blind. Lady Eleanor, divorce threat, lipstick a false trail. Colonel Harrington, business ruin, cufflink planted. Poirot produced a small brass ear trumpet. The bell tower is a natural resonator. The clockwork tolling, recorded at 3:00 p.m., was piped through the speaking tube to the kitchen, then reflected up the stairwell. Penny's shot, fired at 9:15, struck the bell's rim at 9:17, creating a delayed harmonic. To the ear, it seemed one continuous event originating inside the chamber. He clapped once. The sound returned layered, first direct, then from the bell, then the hills. The echo lied, but the bullet scars do not. In the boot room, Poirot displayed 2 pairs. Sir Reginald's brogues, mud from the flower bed, nail pattern matching tower prints. Graves's indoor shoes, clean but one sole wet, changed in haste. The study window open latch, geraniums crushed in a straight line, body dragged outward, then around to the servant's stair. A brass grill in the kitchen ceiling, connected directly to the bell chamber. The wax cylinder's sound travelled downward, then bounced back up the stairwell, amplified. The final piece, the second bullet recovered from the rafters. .22 caliber, not .455, Penny's lady's pistol, found hidden in her mattress. Poirot addressed the room. 2 guns, 2 shots, 2 killers, 1 fatal, 1 theatrical. The locked door was a red herring twice over, first to convince us of suicide, then to frame Penny. The true crime occurred in the study. The tower was the stage. He turned to Graves. You carried a dead man 93 steps to buy time, but the little grey cells count stairs as surely as heartbeats. Graves sank into a chair, defeated. I only wanted to protect her. Penny wept silently. You let me believe I was a murderer. Lady Eleanor spoke, voice steady for the first time. Reginald's sins echo still, but they end here. Arthur stared at the plan. The estate's bankrupt. All this for ashes. Colonel Harrington replaced his monocle. War was cleaner. Poirot gathered his gloves. The bell tolls for truth, mes amis, and today it tolls clear. He bowed. My work is done. Inspector Hargrove will take statements. The courts will decide the rest. As he left, the sun broke fully over the manor. The bell tower caught the light, bronze gleaming like forgiveness. Somewhere, a single peal rang out. Graves's hand, perhaps, in a final act of service, or the wind stirring the clapper. The echo rolled across the moors, pure, unburdened, and for the first time, honest. Chapter 7. The Final Peal. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, laying golden bars across the turkey rug where, only hours before, Penny Thorne had stood in handcuffs, and Graves had crumbled like old mortar. Now the room was orderly again. The trestle table cleared. The architectural plan rolled and returned to the estate office. the evidence boxes sealed with red wax and police tape. Only the faint scent of gun oil lingered, a ghost of the night's violence. Hercule Poirot stood by the mantel, hands clasped behind his back, the perfect curve of his moustache catching the light like a satisfied cat. Inspector Hargrove had taken Graves and Penny away in the Black Maria. The sound of its engine had faded down the gravel drive 20 minutes ago. The remaining household, Lady Eleanor, Arthur, Eliza, Colonel Harrington, sat in a loose semicircle, each wrapped in private aftermath. Poirot broke the silence. Mesdames et messieurs, the storm is over. The bell has told its last deception. Before I depart, let us tie every knot, answer every question, and allow the manor to breathe again. He began with the legal reckoning. Mr. Graves' charge: murder in the first degree. Evidence: left-handed grip on the Webley, thumbprint on clockwork key, mud trajectory in Sir Reginald's brogues, suicide note written under duress. Sentence: likely the gallows at Pentonville. The judge would show no mercy for a servant who turned on his master, whatever the provocation. Mitigating 20 years of loyal service, Sir Reginald's cruelty toward Penny. The defence barrister would plead manslaughter, but the locked room staging sealed the verdict. Miss Penelope Thorne charge: conspiracy to pervert the course of justice, unlawful discharge of a firearm, accessory after the fact. Evidence: wax cylinder fingerprints, fishing line, lady's pistol, planted clues. Sentence: 3 to 5 years in Holloway, with possibility of early release for good behaviour. The judge would note her youth, her motive of filial revenge, and the fact that her bullet struck bronze, not flesh. Future: Lady Eleanor, moved by the girl's story, promised to fund a secretarial course upon release. She will not return to service, the widow declared. Poirot turned to the financial aftermath. Arthur Langford, now Sir Arthur, heir to a bankrupt baronetcy, stood by the window, staring at the bell tower, as though it might yet save him. The estate is insolvent, he said flatly. Father's debts exceed the assets by $47,000. The Manchester factory is mortgaged to the hilt. The London house must be sold. I'll keep the manor barely, by liquidating the railway's shares. Poirot nodded. Yet you are alive, monsieur. And free of the gambling dens. A fresh start, perhaps, in the colonies? Arthur's laugh was bitter. With what? My good looks? Eliza spoke from the sofa, her sketchbook open to a fresh page. Charcoal lines of the tower, now peaceful. I'm leaving for Paris. Julian has a studio in Montmartre. Father's fortune was never mine to inherit, and I choose love over ledgers. Lady Eleanor placed a gloved hand on her daughter's. I will sell the pearls. You will have a dowry of independence. Colonel Harrington cleared his throat. The Manchester contract, Reginald's underhanded play, cost me $40,000. But the factory is yours now, Arthur. I'll buy it back at fair value. Call it war reparations. Arthur's eyes widened. You'd save the estate, yes, and employ you as manager. You've a head for figures when you're sober. Consider it penance for your father's sins, and mine for underestimating you. A handshake sealed the bargain. The manor would stand. Poirot addressed the emotional loose ends. She rose, walked to the window and gazed at the gardens where geraniums still bore the scar of the dragged body. Reginald was a tyrant in velvet. I consulted the solicitor not for divorce, but to protect the children's trust. He discovered my meetings, twisted them into adultery. The anonymous letters, he wrote them himself to keep us in line. She turned, eyes clear. I mourn the man he might have been. not the man he was. She closed her sketchbook. The tower will be my last drawing here. I forgive Penny. She was more victim than villain. In the kitchen, before departure, Poirot had spoken to the girl alone. You fired an echo, ma petite, not a bullet. Use your sentence to learn. When you walk free, the world is wide. She had pressed a small charcoal portrait into his hand. Poirot himself, eyes twinkling, for the man who saw the truth. As the Black Maria pulled away, Graves had asked the constable to stop at the tower door. He climbed the 93 steps one final time, alone, and rang the bell. 12 slow peals, the traditional knell for the dead. The sound rolled across the moors, pure and mournful. Then he descended, head high, and surrendered to the cuffs. Poirot revealed the final physical secrets, the speaking tube, removed and presented to Hargrove. A brass grill in the kitchen ceiling, connected to the bell chamber by a tin pipe. The wax cylinder's sound had travelled downward, then reflected upward, creating the illusion of live tolling. The servant's stair, a narrow spiral hidden behind a false panel in the boot room. Disused since Victorian times, its steps still bore the scuff marks of Graves's ascent. The clockwork mechanism, disassembled on the table, a music box movement, gears meshed with the bell rope pulley. The spring tension required 2 full winds, Graves's thumbprint in oil. The 2 bullets, 455, Webley round, fatal, left temple, study. 32 ladies' pistol round, ricochet, bell rim, tower doorway. The fishing line knot, a sailor's bend, taught to Graves in the Royal Navy. The line itself dissolved in the rain, but the knot impression remained on the key. Poirot produced a final document, Sir Reginald's true will, discovered in a hidden drawer behind the study globe. Executed 6 months ago, after the anonymous letters began. He feared murder. The estate passes to Arthur, but with a codicil, $5,000 to any servant dismissed without cause. Penny will receive her bequest upon release. Arthur exhaled, a sound between laugh and sob. The old bastard had a conscience after all. At noon, Poirot climbed the tower one last time. The chamber was swept clean, the bloodstain scrubbed, the bullet scar in the rafters patched with fresh oak. He stood beneath the great bronze bell, laid a gloved hand on its cool flank, and spoke to the empty air. You have told for centuries, mon ami. For births, deaths, victories, defeats. Today you toll for truth. He pulled the rope. Once, the peal rolled out, clear, unbroken, across the Sussex hills. No echo of deceit, no phantom tolling, only the honest voice of bronze. Downstairs, the household gathered on the terrace to listen. Lady Eleanor closed her eyes. Arthur raised a glass of water, his first sober toast. Eliza sketched the sound wave in the air. Colonel Harrington saluted. The bell spoke once more, then fell silent. Poirot's carriage waited at the porte-cochere. Graves the younger, kitchen boy, no relation, loaded the valise. Poirot paused at the threshold. Madam, he said to Lady Eleanor, the manor is yours to remake. Let the bell ring for joy now. She pressed a small velvet box into his hand, her late husband's gold pocket watch, engraved to RL from EL 1905, for the man who gave us time to heal. Poirot bowed, eyes suspiciously bright. Time is the one thing detectives cannot restore, madame, but truth, truth is eternal. He climbed aboard. The horses clopped down the drive, past the topiary lions, past the geranium bed where the earth was already healing. At the gate, he turned for one last look. The bell tower caught the sun, bronze flashing like a promise. In the carriage, Poirot opened his notebook. On the final page he wrote, himself a small sip of tisane from a thermos. The Sussex hills rolled by, green and gold. Somewhere behind, a bell told the hour. 12 clear notes, counting the manor into a new day. A postcard arrived at Whitehaven Mansions, postmarked Paris. Eliza's handwriting, the tower is silent now. We ring a smaller bell for tea. Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. E, another from Holloway, learning shorthand. The bell rings for meals, not vengeance. PT, a third, on Langford Manor stationery, factory profitable. Arthur engaged to the Colonel's niece. The great bell rings only for weddings now. Lady E. Poirot pinned them above his desk, beside the charcoal portrait of himself. He allowed the moustache a satisfied twitch. The little grey cells, he murmured, they rest until the next echo. And in the quiet of the Sussex countryside, Langford Manor kept its peace. The bell tower stood sentinel, bronze warmed by sun, its throat ready but no longer required to speak of death. It waited patiently for the next joyful peal. Chapter 8. Lingering Doubts. No clatter of breakfast trays, no murmur of servants in the corridors. Most had been given the day off to recover from the shock. Only the kitchen boy, young Graves, no relation, moved about, polishing the great copper pans with more vigour than necessary. The bell tower stood sentinel in the garden, its bronze flank warm under the September sun. Hercule Poirot had intended to depart at dawn. His valise was packed, his carriage ordered for the 10:15 to London. Yet, as he descended the grand staircase, a folded note slipped beneath his bedroom door caught his eye. The paper was manor stationery, the handwriting hurried but unmistakable. Arthur Langford. Monsieur Poirot, come to the estate office before you leave. Something is wrong with the books. I cannot make head nor tail. A.L. Poirot's moustache twitched. He detoured to the office, a narrow room behind the library, lined with green ledgers and the faint smell of ink and mildew. Arthur stood at the desk, shirt sleeves rolled, hair dishevelled. Spread before him were account, books, bank statements, and a leather-bound journal sealed with red wax. I thought the worst was over, Arthur said, voice rough from sleeplessness and yesterday's brandy. But look at this. He opened the journal. The pages were filled with Sir Reginald's spidery script. Columns of figures, dates, initials. Father kept 2 sets of books. The public ones, bad enough. But this, Arthur tapped a line. $18,000 transferred to an account in Zurich, March 1926. Initials, RL to CH. Another $12,000 June, same recipient. Poirot's eyes narrowed. CH, Colonel Harrington? Arthur nodded. There's more. A memorandum. Insurance against exposure. Manchester deal. And this, he produced a telegram, yellowed with age. Funds received. Silence assured. CH. Poirot took the chair, adjusted his pince nez, and began to read. The journal chronicled a second crime, one that predated the murder by 18 months. Poirot closed the journal. Blackmail! The Colonel was not merely a rival, he was a parasite. Arthur rubbed his temples. There's a safe behind the panelling. Father's combination, his wedding date. Inside, the original forged tenders stamped by the ministry clerk. If this surfaces, the factory sale collapses. The Colonel's $40,000 fair value offer? He'd pay with my father's own extortion money. Poirot rose. We must confront the Colonel before he departs. They found Harrington in the billiard room, packing a pigskin valise. His trench coat hung on a cue rack. A half-smoked cigar smouldered in an ashtray. He turned, monocle flashing. Poirot! Arthur! Bad form, bursting in like this. Poirot laid the journal on the green baize. Monsieur, you have profited from murder in more ways than one. Harrington's face hardened. I don't follow. Non? $30,000 from Sir Reginald's fear, the Manchester fraud, your silence purchased with his ruin, and yesterday you offered to save the estate with the very blood money." Harrington's hand strayed to the cue rack, then stopped. "Reginald was a crook. I merely balanced the scales." Arthur stepped forward. "You balanced them on my inheritance. The estate is mine now. I'll expose the forgeries unless you return every penny, with interest." Harrington laughed, a dry rattle. "You'll ruin yourself. The factory, the manor, gone." Poirot's voice cut like a scalpel. "Or you return the funds, sign a confession, and retire to your regiment's good graces. The alternative, Scotland Yard, the Old Bailey, and a cell beside graves." Silence stretched. Outside, a rook cawed. Harrington's monocle dropped to the carpet. "Damn you, Poirot!" He opened the valise, revealing bundles of Swiss francs. $2,800. The rest I invested. I'll wire for it." Arthur exhaled. "The estate breathes." Poirot wired Inspector Hargrove from the village post office. The clerk, Mr. Percival Wren, now retired to Bournemouth, was arrested by tea time. His confession, $500 from Sir Reginald, $200 from Harrington to keep silent. A minor cog, but the wheel turned. With the Colonel's funds returned, Arthur reopened the safe. Beneath the forgeries lay a second envelope, sealed, addressed to Poirot. Inside, a letter in Sir Reginald's hand, dated the day of his death. "If you read this, I am dead. The Colonel bleeds me. Graves suspects. Penny is my shame. Trust no one." The bell rings at 9, my signal for help. R.L. Poirot folded the letter. He knew the evening bell was a cry, not tradition. At dusk, Poirot climbed the tower one last time. The chamber was swept, the bullet scar patched, but beneath the bell's rim, a tiny brass plate glinted, newly engraved. "In memory of truths told and debts repaid. A.L. 1928. Arthur had climbed at dawn, chisel in hand. The bell would ring for honesty now. From Holloway, a second letter arrived weeks later. Penny had confessed the brooch theft. She had taken it, years ago, to pawn for her mother's medicine. Sir Reginald discovered it, used it as leverage. Her sentence reduced to 18 months. At Pentonville, Graves refused a priest. His last words to the warden, "Tell the manor the bell rang true." 1 year later, the factory thrived under Arthur's management. Eliza's Paris sketches sold in Bond Street galleries. Lady Eleanor opened the manor to artists' retreats. The bell rang for tea at 4, sharp. Colonel Harrington vanished to Kenya, his regiment's honour quietly buried. The 30,000 funded a village school named for Penny's mother. The 10:15 steamed out of the village station. Poirot watched the manor shrink, the bell tower a bronze needle against the sky. In his pocket, the gold watch, the charcoal portrait, and a single bronze pebble, chipped from the bell's rim the day of the ricochet. He smiled. The echo was fatal, oui, but the truth, it rings forever. The train whistle sounded clear and true. Somewhere behind, the manor bell answered. 12 joyful peals for a wedding. Arthur and the Colonel's niece beneath a September sky. The little grey cells rested until the next mystery. Chapter 9. Confessions and Farewells. Evening light slanted through the west windows, laying long rectangles of gold across the parquet. The chandeliers were unlit. Only the hearth glowed, throwing soft shadows onto the faces of the 5 who remained. Lady Eleanor, Arthur, Eliza, Colonel Harrington returned under truce, and Hercule Poirot, seated in the centre like a benevolent judge. A single decanter of 1898 Armagnac stood on the low table, with 5 crystal glasses, Poirot's quiet insistence on ritual closure. Outside, the bell tower caught the last rays of sun, its bronze surface blazing as though lit from within. No one had rung it since Arthur's dawn engraving. Tonight would be different. Lady Eleanor spoke first, her voice steady as the manner itself. "I have a confession." She opened a small morocco case and laid a photograph on the table. A younger Sir Reginald, arm around a laughing housemaid, Penny's mother, Rose. On the reverse, in faded ink, R&R, Brighton, 1903. "I knew," Eleanor said simply. "Reginald brought her here as companion after I miscarried our third child. I turned blind, cowardice, not ignorance. When Rose was dismissed pregnant, I sent money anonymously, guilt in envelopes. Penny grew up on my silence." Arthur's glass paused halfway to his lips. "You funded her. Every quarter day. I thought it absolution. It was complicity." Eliza reached for her mother's hand. "We all wore masks, maman." He set the glass down, untouched. "I knew about the gambling debts, yes. But I also knew father was smuggling. Opium through the Manchester docks, hidden in railway crates. I turned blind for the allowance. When the colonel blackmailed him, I hoped it would force father to stop. Instead, it killed him." He produced a small ledger, his own, not his father's. "I've burned the smuggling routes. The factory runs clean now, but I carry the stain." Colonel Harrington's monocle glinted as he leaned forward. "And I carry mine." He laid a medal ribbon on the table. Distinguished Service Order, faded. "Earned in Flanders, lost in Manchester. Reginald's forgeries cost me honour. I answered with extortion. I returned the money, but not the shame." He looked at Arthur. "Your offer of employment I accept, as foreman, not owner. Let the manor profit from my penance." She opened her sketchbook to a fresh page. A charcoal study of Penny. Eyes fierce, apron starched. "I hated her once, thought her common. Then I learned we shared a father's cruelty. I've written to Holloway, offered to teach art classes when she's released. She will not be alone." He raised his glass, the Armagnac catching firelight like liquid topaz. "Mes amis, confession is the bell that rings clearest. I, too, have a failing to admit." He produced the gold pocket watch Lady Eleanor had given him. "I intended to keep this as trophy. Instead, I had it altered." He opened the case. Inside, the original engraving had been joined by a new line, microscopic but legible. "I will return it to Penny on her release. A reminder that even a tyrant's gift can be redeemed." Lady Eleanor rose. "The bell has not rung since the murder. Tonight it will speak for all of us." They processed to the tower as dusk deepened. 5 figures in the twilight, footsteps echoing on the spiral stair. 93 steps, counted aloud by Arthur, each number a heartbeat. At the chamber, the great bronze bell hung serene. The clockwork mechanism had been removed, the speaking tube sealed. Only the rope remained, thick and honest. Lady Eleanor grasped it first, for Rose and for my silence. The peal rolled out, pure and mournful. Arthur next, for the smuggling, and for my cowardice, deeper, resonant, for Penny and for my scorn. Higher, hopeful Colonel Harrington, for blackmail and for lost honour. Steady, soldierly. Finally, Poirot, small hands surprisingly strong. For truth and for the little grey cells that serve it, the clearest note of all. 5 peals, 5 confessions. The sound carried across the moors, over the village, into the darkening sky. Somewhere, a fox paused. A child in the cottages looked up. The bell spoke, and the manor listened. Back in the drawing room, the Armagnac was poured. To Lady Eleanor, Poirot presented a sealed envelope. The original anonymous letters, returned unopened. "Burn them! The past is ash." To Arthur, a railway share certificate. Poirot had purchased a small stake in the factory with his fee. A dividend in honesty. To Eliza, a Paris train ticket, first class, dated the following week. For your studio, Julian awaits. To Colonel Harrington. The DSO ribbon cleaned and restitched. Wear it again. Penance is lighter than dishonour. Lady Eleanor announced her plan. The East Wing would become a retreat for women. Artists, writers, those escaping cruel husbands. Penny would manage the house when released. The bell would ring twice daily. 9 a.m. for work, 4 p.m. for tea. Never again at night. Poirot's departure. Redux. The carriage waited under a sky pricked with stars. The household assembled on the steps. Lady Eleanor pressed a final gift into his hands. A small bronze miniature bell, cast from a chip of the Great One. Ring it when you solve the next impossible crime. Poirot bowed. I shall, madame, and it will echo only truth. As the carriage rolled away, the manor lights winked out one by one. At the gate, Poirot looked back. The bell tower stood black against the stars, silent but no longer ominous. Poirot pinned the letters beside the charcoal portrait. He rang the miniature bell. Ding! A sound bright as forgiveness. The little grey cells rested, the manor slept, and somewhere in Sussex a great bronze bell waited for the next joyful peal. Chapter 10. Poirot's Reflection. Outside the window, the Sussex landscape slipped past in moonlit patches. Hedgerows, sleeping villages, the occasional glint of a canal. The 10:15 from Langford Junction to Victoria was nearly empty. Only an elderly clergyman dozed in the far corner, and a young couple whispered over a shared newspaper. Poirot sat alone in his compartment, valise on the rack. The miniature bronze bell from Lady Eleanor, nestled in velvet beside the charcoal portrait of himself. He opened his notebook to a fresh page and began to write in his neat continental hand. Poirot closed the book, tucked it away, and allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. The little grey cells were quiet now, but not idle. They turned like the wheels beneath him, reviewing every step of the spiral stair. He had arrived at Langford Manor expecting family discord, perhaps a minor theft or a forged will. Instead, he found a symphony of human frailty, each player convinced their note was the only one. Graves' loyalty curdled into murder. Penny, filial rage armed with wax and fishing line. Arthur, heir to ruin, yet heir to redemption. Eliza, artist of the heart, prisoner of the purse. Lady Eleanor, keeper of secrets, giver of sanctuary. Colonel Harrington, soldier turned extortionist, then penitent foreman. Poirot reflected. Order and method, oui. But beneath every locked door lies a human heart beating in terror or triumph. 2. The bell as mirror. He lifted the miniature bell, turned it in the moonlight. The great bronze original had been weapon. Its tolling a diversion. Witness. It scars the bullet's signature. Confessor. It peels the household sins. Redeemer. Its silence, now a promise of peace. He rang it softly. Ding. A sound bright as forgiveness. The elderly clergyman stirred, smiled in his sleep. 3. The evidence revisited Poirot's mind, catalogued the artefacts, now boxed and bound for Scotland Yard. The Webley, fatal bullet, left temple, contact range, the lady's pistol. 32 caliber, ricochet scar on bronze, the wax cylinder, Graves's afternoon polishing captured in beeswax, the fishing line dissolved in rain, but the sailor's knot eternal, the forged tenders, ministry stamps, now evidence against the clerk, the suicide note, ink still tacky with fear, the gold pocket watch, altered inscription, time redeemed. He pictured them as he had left them on the manor steps, Lady Eleanor, black veil lifted, eyes clear, Rose House already taking shape. Arthur, shirt sleeves rolled, factory blueprints under arm, the colonel at his side like a gruff guardian. Eliza, sketchbook clutched to chest, Paris ticket in pocket, Julian's letter folded inside. Penny, letter from Holloway, learning to ring the bell at 4 p.m. sharp. It sounds like hope. Graves, final peal at Pentonville, head high, the sailor's knot in his soul untied at last. Poirot recalled the fatal now. The bell rang only for tea, for weddings, for new arrivals at Rose House. The echo was human. Laughter in the East Wing, children in the village school funded by Harrington's restitution, the chime of a miniature bell on a Paris easel. 6. Poirot's private echo. He opened the velvet pouch and drew out the bronze pebble, the chip from the bell's rim, struck by Penny's bullet. In his palm, it was warm from his body heat. He had kept it not as trophy, but as reminder. Every crime leaves a scar. Every scar can be polished into something useful. The train slowed for a signal. In the silence, Poirot heard it. A faint, distant dong, carried on the wind from miles away. The manor bell, ringing the hour. 11 clear notes, counting the night into tomorrow. He smiled. They remember. Victoria Station at 5:47 a.m. Fog curled around the platforms. Porters shouted. The air smelled of coal smoke and coffee. Poirot alighted, cane tapping a brisk rhythm. A taxi waited. Hastings returned from his errand, waving from the driver's seat. Poirot, successful trip. Most satisfactory, mon ami. A locked room, a fatal echo, and a bell that learned to sing again. Hastings grinned. Tea at Whitehaven Mansions. Tea, oui, and then sleep. The little grey cells have earned their rest. Ekit. The Manor, 1 year later. A postcard montage, pinned above Poirot's desk, the letters formed a constellation. Eliza and Julian, Paris. Baby due in spring, we'll name her Rose. Penny, Rose House manager. 50 women sheltered this year. The bell rings for every departure, Freedom Sound. Arthur and Colonel Harrington, Manchester. Factor profits tripled. Wedding bells rang twice, ours and the foreman's daughter. Lad Eleanor, the East Wing is full. I ring the bell at 9 a.m. myself. It sounds like morning. On the first anniversary of the murder, Poirot returned to Langford unannounced. The manor glowed in autumn sun. The East Wing bustled with artists. He climbed the tower alone. The bronze bell hung serene, the patched scar now a subtle seam.